fundamental mind shift that needs to happen. The mindset we're talking about. So let me ask this question. Where is the mind in your body? What is the mind? All of us keep talking about mindset. What is this mindset? This mindset is nothing but where your thought and action meet. That is mindset. Now, how do we actually make this happen? So rather than mindlessly, repeating these words and, going away, I seriously hope some of us have questioned whether we will use some of the stuff that we have learned here today or heard here today or observed here today. I seriously hope we do. For one of the presentations, I just wanted to make an observation. We're talking about, let's understand why are we talking design thinking today, right? Mohan's presentation, I have a request. Please don't use the Volkswagen example anymore. Volkswagen is one of those companies, I don't know how many of you, the founding father of Volkswagen was Adolf Hitler himself. And that has got no disregard for that. But recently, Volkswagen has had it has had to recall 200,000 cars. It had willfully created an engine, a combustion engine, and it admitted it, so I'm not making this fact up, right? Willfully, that covered the emission test. Now, this is the same thing that, as I said in the case of Facebook, the data breach is not an accident. The data breach is a willful disregard for the customer's privacy. Willful disregard. And this is the history of companies that have basically, why is this happening? This is happening not because they are not intelligent people, or not because they have any lack of talent. This is happening because of the fact that they decided to design their company and deceive their customers. Right? So design thinking, therefore, is a lot about how we see our life today in a very different way. There is mediocrity. A lot of us have been talking about design thinking success. This is a Bain research. 71% of the companies that basically do design thinking, digital transformation, are failing. When they fail, and this is the result of CEOs of these companies talking about how they have moved away from the goals and objectives that they basically set themselves, which itself could have been mediocre, to lesser ones, so that they can report that they have achieved success, right? So in terms of why we need design thinking today, we are in a digital transformation age. And design thinking, what difference does it need to make with this digital transformation? It needs to understand what is conceptualization. How do you take conceptualization into engineering? How does engineering then get into industrialization? For example, how do you prepare a customer? Right? Sabine talked about the ethnography. Now, that ethnography, how do you believe that a customer needs something very urgently? How do you make that customer be able to adapt? He doesn't know everything. He is not observant. He doesn't, and this is something that you have learned from the case studies of Southwest Airlines, where their chairman famously said, "My customer doesn't know everything." So how do you basically go and why do you want to read? You do have to understand your customers, but it is also your responsibility to design an abstract that informs the customer for a better way of life. Somebody who has never seen North America, if you are going to bring that culture to him here and expect him to behave in that manner, you need to give him an education. You need to bring him into, that education needs to get owned up before he can commit himself and say, this works for me and it should work for you too. This is good for you. Please use it. Right? So I think that in the current context, this cycle of ownership to commitment needs to happen dramatically faster. We have some software companies here. We have a product company here. Surya was referring to. How do I transform my people? I guess I'm working, for example, with a life sciences company, and they wanted to create a leadership program of over a year's time. And their simple objective was basically to say, we saved by taking back office operations to India, and we saved 400 billion in the last 3 years. Now we want to see how we can take our people to the next level so they can become part of the global operation, right? And when they said that and they had these conversations, they have no belief in their people, because these are people who are coming in from the same software industry, in the ancestors world. They say, these guys are not capable. This is the statement I had from internal sources talking to me and saying, we don't believe these people, but we're going to give it a try. Now this is where I meant you need to have intent. You need the people who speak about transforming the organization, they need to be able to take accountability and say, whether or not these people get transformed to become global leaders, I take the accountability of making the best possible effort in making sure that I put the best transformation program into place. And that is an outcome. This is the transformation first has to happen with the people who are going to build this transformation program. So they need to have the right construct, and that is essentially, in simple words, conceptualization. I want to talk about Airbus. This is a big case study that is touted out in Harvard, and it's actually spelled out in MIT. Now, they used analytics. And of course, a little bit of machine learning, where data was basically gathered from all the possible sources to make the process of their A350 aircraft building more efficient, so that they could deliver it on time. So, what is new in this? Machine learning is not a new science. Its first application was in 1957. Right? And ever since that, there have been systemic changes to the way in which machines learn. So, is this a new science today? Did Airbus do something? So, why I'm presenting this case is, we keep talking and we keep misleading ourselves on the so-called success stories of design thinking. Okay, this is touted as a design thinking case. This is not design thinking. It talks about a very small part of their enterprise. And by the way, I have had the privilege and the pleasure of working with EADS, which is the mother company of Airbus. So I'm not speaking just from having pulled out a case study from the internet, but actually knowing the industry and its leaders in-house, right? So what happens is, this is one aspect. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, virtual reality is just one aspect of digitization. And by the way, it cannot happen without a user profile personalized and differentiated. Because as the user, as the person keeps transacting, every single transaction creates metadata, creates analysis, and then it leads into building patterns that can be studied for artificial intelligence. Now, so when this look at the statistics of what CI was talking about. 84% talk about artificial intelligence for competitive advantage. It is a shame that these people even talk about it in that light, because competition and innovation are not one and the same. Competition is about what you already know people are doing in the marketplace. How is it innovation? It is not innovation. Innovation is either something that is out of the box, or something that there is no precedent and you're creating it. And what is this out of the box or creating something new? It is not just your imagination, it is a perception of value. That perception of value is very clearly identified in 5 dimensions: quality, cost, delivery, service, and flexibility. Which means it includes engagement and experience. So you have to model this. This is very specific. It is not rocket science, and it is not fluid mechanics either. It is very specific to the way in which you conduct design. Right? So So, those of us who keep thinking that, design is gooey, design thinking is a lot of BS. Yes, it is a lot of BS. When you don't understand, for example, what is a customer ecosystem? What is a customer universe? Why is it that, my employee is today for me very different from the employee I had 15 years ago? So 15 years ago, I had an employee who I basically hired to give instructions, and he come and carry out those instructions. Why? Because it was a less informed world. We didn't believe that he had the capability to take decisions. And we believed that there was a core body that took decisions that was in the best interest of the enterprise, and everyone else executed it. So this was a monopoly, oligopoly world. So that worked. There is nothing wrong with that. But times have changed. Today you basically want to understand a subject, you Google, you understand it. Will everybody be able to interpret it well? Well, that is the capability that you need to build. Information is now available. What organizations need to help their people with is give that freedom to interpret. Are we doing that? This is the essence of design thinking. This is the essence of, trying to create design. So, you learn from that experience. People become adept at being able to interpret information, data, as I kept saying in the morning. It is this very simple thing. Digital is about capturing data at source and making it intelligent. There are three things in digital that we need to understand. It needs to be smart, it needs to be sensitive, it needs to be serendipitous. Smart because every single transaction is enabled, device, channel, and medium independent. Sensitive because it is intelligently used by the user. And serendipitous because every single transaction is an aha moment. It creates a unique experience for the user. Now these are the three simple guidelines. Are we doing our digital transformation, or are we doing design for digital transformation? In that manner is a key question we need to ask ourselves. So, the construct that is relevant today is thinking of experience. Experience is transaction. There is a hierarchy. There is a hierarchy from ecosystem process to an enterprise process to its sub-processes. Each sub-process is further detailed into activities. Each activity is further detailed into tasks and transactions. So, we are talking about an experience of a user at a transaction level, which is really at the bottom of the pyramid. But the engagement is at the highest level. So, this is where the example comes in. Unless and until you have imagined that when my employee who comes in today and contributes intellectual property, I create a method of process for drug discovery. Now this drug discovery involves my business partner who happens to be in South Africa. Why does that have to be an isolated incident? Why cannot that be a regular process in an organization? It's a very simple question. We know that this is a collaborative world. We know we are talking about it from a creative collaboration perspective. So why cannot it be designed into my organizational process? This is not rocket science. So the first aspect is, creating aspirations. So today we are in a world where the customers are learning, like you. You don't know everything that digital has to present. How many people can basically say that, why should a drug be $1? Why can't it be 50 cents? Why can't it be 25 cents? Why should it be a pill? Why cannot it be intravenous? So coming down to aspirational, how do you manage the aspirations, expectations, needs and wants mutually inclusively is basically what you create in design thinking. But what you basically go in terms of industrializing and commercializing is education, ownership and commitment. You prepare customers for your innovation. Don't imagine that you will create an innovation and the customers are ready to embrace it. It's not going to happen, right? You need this process, and this is a very critical part, which is the cornerstone of design thinking. Is in today's economy, and one great example of this is Apple. They have used the convergence of content, computing, and communications. This convergence, if it is not going into the construct of your design, I have no hesitation in saying that you are not designing at all. right? Why? Because we're seeing a physical manifestation of that, and you need to be able to understand the connection between engagement and experience. Engagement is shaping, and experience is influencing. So it's you influence a customer, and this customer influences 10 others. That is basically what is called the institutionalization. And that is how you succeed in the digital economy. And that essentially, to me, is the roadmap of success. You need, every enterprise, big or small, needs two engines. It needs a growth engine. So this part of aspirational is something that needs to be tried, experimented, and some would call it, in multiple ways. But it is a process. And again, both the researchers of McKinsey as well as Bain have proven, and this is research I'm talking about, not their literature, global, which basically does say that organizations fail because they don't have a growth engine that essentially innovates, and an operational engine which is able to suck in the innovation faster than is required. Why? Because the growth cycles have spiraled. Every organization is looking for growth, not just to improve its bottom line, but to improve its top line so that it can funnel money back, as we heard in one of the discussions today, to funnel money back into better developmental projects. So you might take suboptimal steps towards innovation, but someday you need to be able to be on that path of excellence. As I said, at some point in time, if you're on the journey from innocence to excellence, at awareness or definition, hopefully you can set your sights to excellence. And that basically demands a process. When we work with organizations at HREEMM, and this is born out of, this methodology is not born out of trying to put a nice fancy diagram, but actually 32 years of working experience, and some of this has been implemented in places like South African Revenue Services, in American Express, and so on, and there are other examples. So I'm just going to leave that. What we do is designing, transforming, and innovating as a roadmap. And this roadmap is something that is a continuum for sustainable growth. I have already talked about this, so I'm going to leave this presentation. It's going to be with you. And I don't know if I have time for question and answers, but I can take a question or two.